Okay, folks, current events and a history lesson. Current events first, the history lesson second. Yesterday, there was a vote taken in the UN and specifically the Security Council, which basically condemned Israel for placing settlements within the Palestinian designated area. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you exactly what that means at the end of the video, and then I'm going to give you a history lesson regarding Israel. But okay, the bottom line is there was a vote taken which was non-binding, by the way, so it had no effect of law. It was basically a vote just to make a statement that Israel needs to stop building settlements in disputed Palestinian lands. Okay? Now, the United States normally, but not always, vetoes any type of legislation or statements made that are not in the interests of Israel. George Bush has done it. Matter of fact, I think he abstained 6 or 7 times. Never on anything that would actually put a gun to Israel's head, but to make a statement. Well, yesterday, Barack Obama instructed Samantha Power, who is the UN ambassador, to abstain from voicing the official U.S. opinion, i.e. taking a vote on this particular resolution. But at the same time, Samantha Powers got out there and gave a blistering defense of Israel itself. Okay, here is the story, and then I'm going to make a few comments, and then I'm going to give you the history lesson.
At the United Nations Friday, a round of applause you hear there. That is after the Security Council voted 14-0 to condemn Israeli settlements on the occupied West Bank and in East Jerusalem. But in a break from tradition under President Obama, the U.S. abstained from the vote, a move Ambassador Samantha Power defended.
Some may cast the U.S. vote as a sign that we have finally given up on a two-state solution. Nothing could be further from the truth. None of us can give up on a two-state solution. We continue to believe that that solution is the only viable path to provide peace and security for the state of Israel and freedom and dignity for the Palestinian people.
And joining me now, my good friend Bobby Ghosh, editor-in-chief of the Hindustan Times. Good to have you with me, Bobby. Let's talk a little bit about this U.S. abstention and the implications of it. How do you see it playing out? Why would the U.S. abstain on this particular issue, given the fact that President Obama has been very supportive of Israel over the past 8 years?
Okay, before we get into that, a little bit of a history lesson. That particular area where Israel currently resides, okay, was originally Palestinian land, okay? And I'll give you the specific breakdown of what Palestine stood for. But back in 1948, the UN, along with, and I should say, under the direction of Great Britain, had decided that they were going to partition that land into 3 separate areas. One that was going to be controlled by the British, one, okay, that was going to be controlled by the Jews. This was immediately after the Jews went in there and stole a bunch of land. And one part that was going to be controlled by the actual, I guess, former residents, the Palestinians. Okay. And again, I'm going to go back in and give you the history at the end of this.
Not only has he been supportive, he has, of course, given Israel the biggest military deal that they've ever got from the United States. And the last time this came up in the UN in 2011, the US vetoed criticism of the settlement. It is a question that's worth asking, and we have not yet heard a credible answer from the Obama administration. What has changed? Why this 4 weeks before the end of his presidency? Why does the president sort of decide at this occasion not to use the veto? He seems to be trying to send a message, but the message is not clear. It's not like this. These are sanctions that will be placed. It's not like this vote will actually change anything on the ground.
Right.
Even before Bibi Netanyahu said he would not abide by the resolution, it was clear this was meant to be, at the very, very most, a very light rap on the knuckles, and no more than that.
And not only that, but it's also kind of triggered this backlash from both Republicans and Democrats who've traditionally been close allies of President Obama. Let me ask you about Donald Trump's reaction to this. He tweeted out, as he has been throughout other issues, but he's tweeted out saying, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. What do you make of that? What does he mean, you think?
Well, I think we can look at some of the other things he said and some of the other things he has already done, and we get a pretty clear picture. The appointment of David Friedman as his ambassador, elect or nominated ambassador to Israel. This is a man who has completely and utterly denounced the two-state solution. That's a clear signal that.
Okay, the guy that Trump is appointing as Israeli ambassador, this guy is to the right of Benjamin Netanyahu. This guy is a fucking maniac and basically has said, fuck the Palestinians. It's the Jewish way or the highway, and Israel should do whatever the hell they want and not have to consider anybody else. So, translation, Israel takes over the entire region, and the Palestinians have to live underneath Jewish rule, like it or leave the area.
Under the Trump administration, there will be no pursuit of a two-state solution, and anytime any sort of criticism comes up against Israel in the UN, Trump will use the veto, as every American president has done at various times, including this one.
And so how do you see it in terms of from what you've seen form in terms of President-elect Trump's foreign policy, particularly on the Middle East, with the appointment or the suggested appointment of Ambassador Friedman to Israel, General Mattis at the Department of Defense, Rex Tillerson at the State Department? How do you see that playing out in terms of trying to achieve Middle East peace? Is it going to be low on his priority list, or has he said the deal of all deals that he's going to try to go after?
No, I don't think it'll be a priority at all. In the specific instance of Israel-Palestine, as I said, the appointment of Ambassador Friedman indicates that he is actually moving away from a two-state solution. So there's not going to be any progress there, and he seems quite comfortable with that. As far as the larger Middle East goes, it's very clear that he's going to allow Russia and therefore Iran to have a bigger role there. He's very comfortable with Russia taking a bigger role in Syria, for instance, and we know that Vladimir Putin's ambitions don't end there.
Yeah.
So if he and Putin are of one mind on the Middle East, then I don't expect there to be any great progress, not in Israel, Palestine, not in Syria, not anywhere else.
And let me ask you about a point that you brought up, which is President Obama and his relationship with Israel. The fact is, according to Ian Bremmer, somebody that you and I both know, the U.S. and Israel relations have been the strongest under Obama. They would have been strong under Hillary, and they're still going to be strong under Trump. Do you agree, or why or why not?
Absolutely. I think they're going to be stronger under Trump, if anything. These two countries are joined at the hip, and why not? It has been consistent American foreign policy across the decades. Presidents on either side of the political divide have essentially sided with Israel. But Israel is now highly, or at least Prime Minister Netanyahu is highly critical of Barack Obama. But as we said, this is the president of the United States who's given Israel the biggest military deal it has ever received from the United States. So the relationship is a very deep and a very strong one. It will continue. There will be these blips that are essentially sort of for public consumption. There will be occasional differences of opinion. Sometimes they will be expressed in the United Nations. That has always been the case.
Yeah.
Under President Bush, there were I think 8 or 9 occasions when President Bush allowed resolutions to pass in the United Nations about Israel without vetoing. So this sort of disagreement happens. Under Trump, you'll probably see less of that.
Yeah, and yet President Obama is sometimes labeled by those in Israel and some here in this country as being one of the most anti-Israel presidents the U.S. has
It's
ever
laughable.
had. Yeah, absolutely.
It's
All
just
right.
laughable.
Bobby Ghosh, good to have you with us. Happy holidays.
Exactly. That is laughable. Under Barack Obama, Israel has gotten more foreign aid, more defense aid under his administration than any other in history. As a matter of fact, I believe Israel is the #1 country as far as foreign aid is considered. So if President Obama doesn't like him, he sure has a stupid way of showing it. Now, the one thing that will unite Republicans and Democrats across the country, whether and across the spectrums, whether they consider themselves moderates, progressives, or ultra-conservatives, is Israel. And everybody and their brother has to come and kiss the ring of Israel if you want to be a successful politician on either side in this country. Okay, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Paul Ryan, and Mitch McConnell are all on the same page when it comes to anything Israel, okay? Including Israel basically spitting in the face of President Obama and allowing that prick, Benjamin Netanyahu, to disrespect Obama on multiple occasions, okay? Multiple occasions. So, as far as I'm concerned, fuck Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, history is always written by the victors. First of all, the Israelis, okay, stole Palestinian land in forming their country. Now, I'm going to give you the definition of what Palestine is, okay? Palestine, okay, or the Palestinian region, is a geographic and historical region in the Middle East. The Palestinian territories, or as they're known today, occupied Palestinian territories, refers to the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, okay, which Israel occupies and controls. There is an official state of Palestine, by the way, which is recognized, excuse me, by the UN, but the UN, excuse me, does not give it any kind of voting authority for anything. They recognize its existence, but that's about it. Okay? Now, let's go back to Israel and the formation of the Israeli state. Okay, for those of you who aren't aware of it, the state of Israel was formed in 1948, okay? It was formed by a bunch of Jews coming in to Palestine and snatching up a bunch of land and declaring themselves to be the state of Israel, okay? This followed by a war, okay? And for those of you history buffs, it was the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, or it's also known as the First Arab-Israeli War. It was fought between the state of Israel that had been in existence and recognized for one day and a military coalition of Arab states, okay? Those states, basically, if I'm not mistaken, were Egypt, I'm trying to think, Egypt, okay, I got it. Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, okay? Now you gotta hand it to the Jews because they knew that they were gonna have to get into it with all of these guys. And they were prepared. Unlike the other countries that I mentioned, they were totally unprepared. And that's one of the things about Israel. Pretty much every time Israel gets into an armed conflict with somebody, they're always the ones that basically get in there. They have the element of surprise on their hands. Their planning is pretty much always immaculate. They pretty much kick ass and take names and then kick a little ass afterwards. But anyway, just so that you know, what happened there was, because of all the tension and the conflict between the Arabs and the Jews who lived in the area, okay, and this had been going on since like 1917, 1920, if I'm not mistaken. After the Brits had come in there and created a British Mandate of Palestine, they basically were going to partition the Palestinian area, which I outlined previously, into three parts. The Arabs didn't like it, the Jews didn't like it, pretty much nobody liked it, okay? So from 1936 to 1939, the Arabs said, fuck the British, and they revolted in Palestine. The Jews, however, were biding their time, okay? And then they decided after the Arab revolt in Palestine went down that they formed their own insurgency in Palestine, and that started from 1944 to 1947. In 47, okay, out and out war broke out, okay? And that followed specifically the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine, which occurred November 29, 1947. That, again, was the plan to divide Palestine into the three areas: an Arab state, a Jewish state, and a special international regime for the cities of Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Now, that was done because Jerusalem and Bethlehem have major religious significance to all three major religions of the world: the Christians, the Jews, and obviously the Muslims, okay? So there's always pretty much been a two-state solution out there, okay? But you get your hardline Jews that don't want to go for it. Okay. In the first war, okay, or the Arab-Israeli war, Israeli-Arab war, whichever way you want to combine it. The Jews, following their Declaration of Independence, where they snatched the land, a combined invasion by Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, together with expeditionary forces from Iraq, entered Palestine. Jordan had declared privately to the Jewish emissaries that it would abide by the decision not to attack the Jewish state, but they lied. The invading forces took control of the Arab areas and immediately attacked Israeli forces and several Jewish settlements. There were 10 months of fighting over that period of time, and what ended up happening, the fighting took place mostly on the former territory of the British Mandate, and for a short time also in the Sinai Peninsula and southern Lebanon. As a result of the war, the State of Israel retained the area that the UN General Assembly Resolution 181 had recommended for the proposed Jewish state, as well as almost 60% of the area of Arab state proposal. So they got not only theirs, but they got more than half of what was going to be given, obviously, out to the Palestinians. Okay? Fine. Then you started, they formed their particular quote unquote country. They snatched a bunch of the land that was supposed to go to the actual residents, the Palestinians, okay? But then you had several countries that came in and started snatching up too. The Egyptian military took control of the unification of Palestine and Transjordan as a step towards Arab unity. The Palestinians, however, didn't get their own official state. Now, what started happening here? The people around the world started getting pissed off at the Jews. And what happened was 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fled from the area or were expelled from their homes in the area. And that's what officially became Israel. The land that the UN had designated for them that they actually stole, plus 60% of the land that was designated for the Palestinians actually became Israel. Okay, after the war and everything was over, because the Jews, obviously they won, okay, about 700,000 Jews migrated to Israel, and that was because many of them had been expelled from their countries of residence throughout the Middle East. And in some cases, they were undergoing some stuff in Europe. So they started rolling into quote unquote Israel. Now, let's jump to the next war. A little thing called the 6-Day War. Okay. That 6-Day War, the participants, as always, were Israel, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon. That 6-Day War was nothing but a sham because Israel decided that they were going to go out and flex their muscles. Now, the 6-Day War occurred in June of 1967, okay? Couple of things. In 1967, guess who had nuclear capabilities that they stole from the United States as far as the technology was concerned? If you guessed Israel, you are absolutely right. So, because of stolen technology, now Israel is a nuclear power in the middle of the Middle East. Okay? And obviously, they continue to be an ally, and the United States continue to be an ally of Israel. So that created obviously some issues there. Now, let's go into the 6-Day War. Sorry, folks. I was talking about the 6-Day War, and in June of 1967, the Egyptians, for whatever reason, mobilized forces along their Israeli border in the Sinai Peninsula. Israel obviously saw this and decided that they were going to launch preemptive strikes against Egypt. The Egyptians got caught with their pants down, and damn near the entire Egyptian Air Force was destroyed by a few Israeli, obviously bombers, fighters, etc. And Israel, because it was a preemptive strike, suffered very few in losses. Okay. At that time, Egypt had the greatest air force in that particular region. And when Israel knocked out Egypt's air force, they established air superiority. They also simultaneously launched a ground offensive into the Gaza Strip, which Egypt had controlled. They also went into the Sinai, and they basically caught Egypt with their pants down and basically kicked their asses. after they got their butts kicked, Egypt ordered the evacuation of the Sinai, and Israeli forces rushed in and took over the entire Sinai, inflicting heavy losses, period. Egypt called in for help to Syria and Jordan, and they began attacking Israel. But the Egyptians lied to everybody and told them, their allies, Syria and Jordan, that they had defeated the Israeli airstrike. Israel counterattack of Jordan and Syria resulted in the seizure of East Jerusalem as well as the West Bank from the Jordanians. And also, they took over the Golan Heights. After 6 days, a ceasefire was signed with heavy casualties on all sides other than Egypt, which lost fewer than, heavy casualties on all sides other than Israel, with fewer than 1,000 Israelis having been killed, compared to over 20,000 killed from the various Arab countries. Obviously, Israel's military success was attributed to the element of surprise. And again, they had a very well executed and innovative battle plan. That, together with the fact that Egypt and the other countries did a piss poor job in fighting and planning, led to Israel seizing control of the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. That victory boosted up Israel's prestige throughout the world, okay? And the speed and ease of Israel's victory led to a dangerous overconfidence in the ranks of the Israel Defense Forces, which led to some small losses in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Vast amounts of civilian populations were displaced, resulting in long-term consequences of 300,000 Palestinians fleeing from the West Bank and obviously the Golan Heights. They became today's Palestinian refugees. Okay? Now, this also led to a bunch of Jews further flocking into Israel. Today, the Israeli population is approximately, if I'm not mistaken, about 4 million people. The Palestinians are still displaced, okay? Israel obviously has signed peace agreements with various countries, Jordan, Egypt, a couple of other countries, but they are still at loggerheads with countries like Iran. Saudi Arabia is not all that warm and fuzzy. Iraq, whatever the deal is with them. Syria, they're not, all in for the establishment of the Israeli state, etc. Now, let's fast forward to yesterday's vote. Because President Obama has been totally disrespected, he sent a message. Even though he's going out of office, he sent a message. The United States could have blocked the UN resolution on the vote that Israel should remove its settlements from the disputed Palestinian lands. Now, Israel, obviously, their position is those lands aren't in dispute. They're theirs. They got them. That's that. The Palestinians on the other side said, those are our lands. You stole them, and we want our lands back. We deserve, our own lands, blah, 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 blah. Okay. The United States, as I stated, has always blocked that type of UN resolution because we have veto rights within the UN Security Council. Obama yesterday said, hell, we're not going to block this at this point. We will issue a statement regarding how Israel is treated, but this basically is a resolution that states that there should be a two-state settlement here. There should be a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. Now, for those of you who don't know what Israeli settlements are, this is not what you would call going out and building a few houses in various areas. No, Israeli settlements are actually towns that they build. They build homes, they build shopping centers, they build infrastructure. These are major deals which, after they are completed, basically take control of the areas that these quote-unquote settlements are built in. This can't go on if there is ever going to be a two-state settlement. Now, what your buddy Donald Trump has done is he has nominated an ambassador to Israel that basically is of the mind, fuck two-state settlements, fuck two-state solutions. Israel needs to take full control of the entire areas, including Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Golan Heights, Gaza Strip, etc. And anybody living there either comes directly under Israeli rule from now till the end of time, or they leave. Obama is not going for it. He hasn't gone for it. So now there's going to be an open question on what the U.S. position is going to be once Donald Trump comes into office. Okay, folks, hopefully that gives you a little bit of background on what went down yesterday as far as the United States abstaining on the vote in the Security Council, which in my opinion was a slap on the wrist to Benjamin Netanyahu, has no effect of law. Israel's already come out and said that they're going to ignore it. And I gave you a little bit of the background on where all of this came from.